Welcome back to the Chad X podcast. It's me, your host, Chad X, and we have our signature guest, Ferris. Say hi to the people, Ferris.
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Got it. We have a few stories we want to discuss with you today. We're going to start off with one that we found, we were discussing before the podcast, and I found particularly interesting, and that is what's going on in Turkey. Some of you may have heard, may have seen in the news. There are a few protests going on right now because Erdogan, the president or current leader of Turkey, arrested the mayor of one of the largest cities in Turkey, who is set to be his political opponent in the next national election. He's the leader of the Kemalist Party, which is the more secular of the two major forces in Turkish politics. Erdogan is, of course, the leader of the more conservative, technically considered an Islamist party in Turkey. Erdogan has a lot of support in the rural areas of Turkey and with people who are more conservative religiously. The other party, the Kemalist parties, have, of course, had more support in the urban areas and with more secular, less religious types. This arrest really comes at an interesting time because Erdogan was currently in the process of negotiating a peace deal with some leaders of the PKK and their affiliated parties. The PKK is a Turkish, I believe the official translation is the Kurdish Workers' Party. They're a Kurdish militant faction and political group that is advocating for the establishment of an autonomous Kurdish state. Historically, it would have been referred to as Kurdistan. There's a lot of history behind that, going all the way back into when the original borders of several current Middle Eastern countries were drawn. The Kurds were sort of the one faction that the European colonizers didn't give their own territory. And so they've kind of sprawled between Iran, Turkey, and Syria. And they have somewhat autonomous governments in several of those regions, notably in Turkey and Syria. With the sort of dissolution of the prior Syrian state and the sort of pseudo-establishment of a new one under their leader currently right now, al-Shara, we're seeing sort of a restructuring of what the Kurds expect to happen. And it looks like Erdogan is going to give them some concessions towards more further autonomy in order to stop what is currently being described as an insurgency movement, which is that the PKK is, of course, attempting to establish their own state. It looks like they may settle for being sort of an autonomous region with a degree of self-governance inside of the overall Turkish state, though, which would basically amount to the win for the Turkish people, or Erdogan in particular, his government, would be that their security forces would still be able to move through that region somewhat freely. But in terms of elections and governance and what laws they had and how things were set up for the Kurdish people inside that region, it would probably be completely up to elected officials established by whatever sort of process was set up by the political parties who made these negotiations with Erdogan. This is, of course, going to be interesting because the Kurdish people have historically been much more in support of the Kemalist types and the more secular leaders. The PKK is a pretty secular organization. They are more nationalist than they are religiously motivated, which makes sense considering the Turks and the Kurds are both predominantly Sunni ethnic groups. So it's interesting to see how this is all going to shake out, considering the PKK and their affiliate parties have always, not always, but historically been much more interested in supporting the Turkish opposition parties, the Kemalist parties, than they have been in supporting Erdogan and his party. So it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. My personal prediction is that the Kurds are going to kind of allow this to happen. They're going to allow Erdogan to get a little more authoritarian, to take a little bit more control, to jail his political opponents, which is what's going on right now. But ultimately, they are going to get the concessions they want, and the established leaders of the PKK are going to probably set up some form of pseudo-corrupt government that they have in their own regions. The real issue with the PKK, in my opinion, is that a lot of their leadership is very old. And Erdogan himself, an older leader, one of the older leaders in the region. So we're seeing a lot of the gerontocracy, which we as a podcast have always been committed to pointing out and fighting against. We want young people to have the right to have self-determination, especially in countries that are younger. And Turkey is one of the youngest countries in that sort of Middle Eastern European connection zone. They're younger than Greece. They're younger than Macedonia. They're younger than several of their neighboring countries. And I think the young people in Turkey should have the right to self-determine and establish which leaders they want. If that is Erdogan, which, to be clear, it may be. It may be that young people in Turkey really support Erdogan and his policies. I think that's fine, but I do think Erdogan needs to. I think all of these old leaders need to set up the process of having a successor. This is something Ferris in particular brought up, is having young successors in waiting. An example of a country I think is doing it the right way, which a lot of people have issues with, and they have a lot of strange stuff going on, but specifically in terms of how they're handling the gerontocratic tendencies around the world of keeping old people in charge for too long, is actually Saudi Arabia, in which their current king is an old man. I believe he's in his 80s. He's I mean, he's on
Yeah,
his way
something
out.
like that.
Yeah,
But he's still like I said. To be fair, like in that situation, you're right. Saudi Arabia, their leaders, it's Bin Salman. So let me look up his
he's
name
not
really
officially their
quickly.
leader. Mohammed bin Salman
No,
is not officially their
no.
leader.
But Salman is the guy's name because even
Oh,
Mohammed bin Salman means like the
the son
child
of
of
someone.
Salman. So
Right.
let's see. But yeah, like because Mohammed bin Salman is officially not their leader, quote unquote. He just
It's
the crown
Salman.
prince,
Yeah, it's
but he
Salman
is
bin
their leader.
Abdulaziz. Right. And that's what I'm
So
saying. It's best for that situation where a lot of the day to day operations are being run by the young heir in waiting, Mohammed bin Salman. Salman bin Abdulaziz bin Saud is the
yeah, he's 89 years old, man.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got to be on his
Wow.
way out.
Oh, he's definitely
That's what I'm saying.
he's gone.
But he did the right thing. He said, you know what?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm old. I'm out of touch. Let me bring my son in and make sure he can set things up so that we're effectively going to be governed after I pass, which could happen any day now.
Yeah.
But back to,
That's crazy.
yeah. But back to Turkey. Ferris, your thoughts on the whole Turkey situation?
Um, I think, like I said, it's gonna it's not the right move to do. Honestly, it is not the right move to arrest your political opponent like that. That's just gonna cause conflict, and it's gonna make you look worse, especially for time when it comes for elections. I think he needs to. If I'm him, I need to start finding a successor, especially in his party. Prop him up a bit, a younger guy, make him as the face, next face of things because Erdogan's getting up there in age. I think you know what he's afraid of. I really do believe he's afraid of like potentially getting arrested.
Like his
You know?
opponents are. Yeah.
Yes. For like, because sometimes some of these people when if they're so afraid of like the aftermath that they feel like okay, instead of me getting arrested, let me just stay in power as long as I can, so I don't get arrested.
Exactly.
You know?
When you had to do all that dirt to get your spot, you hold on to it more tightly because you're like, well, if I ever, go down, if I ever lose this power and this position I have, they're gonna come get me for all the dirt I did to get here and all the dirt I did while
Yeah.
I was here. And that's the thing about the whole region. I mean, he arrested his opponent for corruption, and I'm not saying that the governor, or I'm sorry, the mayor was not corrupt. I mean, I think pretty much every politician in that region has some level of corruption they're involved in. I mean, in America as well, we've legalized corruption with the term lobbying, but in general, pretty much every politician around the world could be brought up for corruption in some way, shape, or form. At some point throughout their career, they engaged in a backdoor deal. I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying I don't know if the level of corruption this person was engaged in matches the level of charges being brought against him. And I don't think if you're really on an anti-corruption campaign, he's not the first person you would arrest. He is the first person you would arrest if you're looking to cement yourself as the sole candidate who can effectively win an election in Turkey, which is I think what Erdogan's doing. That being said, like you said, Erdogan, 71 years old. The Turkey he was born and raised in is not the Turkey that exists today, and he needs to find somebody who's younger, who does have an understanding of where the world is heading and where Turkey as a nation is heading, to take over and be ready for that. But speaking of countries who may be having corruption issues, we have the main story of the day, the one I was most interested in bringing up, which is the recent, how can I describe it? The recent set of circumstances around immigration in this country, specifically the revocation of 530,000 green cards and residencies from a combination of Cuban, Haitian, and Nicaraguan nationals by the Donald Trump administration, as well as Ferris has a quick highlight to give you guys on the sale of the gold cards, the residencies that can be bought in place of green cards that Donald Trump has been offering. So, Ferris, you want to go ahead and start us off with the gold cards, and then we'll go into what's happening with people losing their green cards?
I just want a quick overview, guys. So I think I read something like yesterday regarding to gold cards that Trump said like what earlier last month, or he said that he was gonna start selling gold cards, which is so basically selling citizenship for the United States. It will be automatic citizen if you spend $5 million on it. Like you basically buying citizenship for $5 million. And so far, if I remember what I was reading, I think it was like 5,000 has been sold so far. So I think his goal, he said that he wants to sell 5 million, and the reason why he wants to sell 5 million of it is to kind of help get rid of the deficit, you know. So the national debt, because he's like, if I'm right, the calculation said if you sell 5 million for 5 million, I think that's like 50 trillion, if I'm right.
something like that.
So
I
something
mean,
like that. So he's trying to like get rid of the national debt by doing like that. So we shall see how it goes. So far, 5,000 people buying the 5 million. It's kind of impressive. I'll give it that.
I'm not gonna.
So
Yeah, that's what is that? That's like $25 billion he's raised
yeah,
in a month.
yeah,
I mean,
in a month, it's pretty impressive. I'll give him that for sure.
say what
So
you want about Donald Trump as a politician. As a businessman, this guy has got it down. Like he's making deals. I might have to buy his book, The Art of the Deal. Like that's truly like in 1 month to raise $25 billion. Now, clearly, I mean, he's selling citizenship. That's kind of something that historically we've been opposed to our government officials doing, but. There are other countries in the world that have similar practices where if you spend a certain amount of money, if you invest a certain amount in the local economy and local infrastructure, you can get citizenship. The Dominican Republic is one country I know for sure has that offer. And they've had it for like 100 years. Like at any point throughout history, if you went to the Dominican Republic and you had a certain amount of money and assets that you were willing to use and to leverage into getting a citizenship, you could get one. I guess maybe you could say that since we're all in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, Trump is borrowing what he considers to be great ideas from other nations in the region, and he's using those ideas to fix a system that a lot of people thought was broken, which is why he was elected. Another issue, another crack in the system that people voted for Trump to fix was immigration. There have been a lot of people saying that both legal and illegal immigration in the United States have been out of control, and Donald Trump certainly is doing something about that. He not only has been deporting lots of people who came to this country illegally, as well as sending some of them to detention camps in El Salvador, and he has begun the process of prepping Guantanamo Bay to receive illegal immigrants. He's recently started going after the legal immigration issue. There was sort of a real issue. We did a podcast episode about it maybe a month or two ago about the issue with a lot of people talking about H-1B visas, which is visas for tech workers and other qualified workers in high need industries with labor shortages that they would use, often used for Indian tech workers, is probably the group that was viewed as the largest recipients of the H-1B visas. But there are other types of programs to allow people residency in this country that many people who are on the right, who are Trump supporters, thought were being abused by people trying to come into this country. One of them is just overall residency for people who are using refugee status to try to stay in this country. Some of the biggest users of that have been Venezuelans, Haitians, and Cubans. Those three nationalities have sort of disproportionately used the fact that they are from unstable or politically oppressive countries that the United States views as enemies to some degree, notably Venezuela and Cuba. But Haiti, it's more the instability. But just in general, those three countries, as well as Nicaragua, recently had 530,000 of their nationals who were residing in the U.S. as refugees stripped of their refugee status, and they are
mhm.
set to be deported.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of these deportations are sent them to El Salvador. So from what I saw, sending them to El Salvador. I remember like they started deporting a lot of Venezuelans, right? They sent to El Salvador. There's an order, there's a judge that ordered them to be like this. That's unconstitutional. You gotta like bring them back, right?
Yep,
And the president of El Salvador basically said, "Oh, too late. You can't." Well, he's like, "He's already here. I'm not sending him back."
literally said that.
So yeah, I think he's getting paid what they're getting paid. They're not even getting paid much. I'll be honest with you, bro.
It's
From
a
what I saw, I
couple.
think
It's a couple
it was like
thousand per detainee.
yeah, okay, yeah, I got you. Because it was like, so it was like so far 6 million. I'm like, $6 million to get these people in this. You're not even getting much money, bro. Like, I would have asked for way more money than that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy.
You might have to
And
think
even though
though.
it's yeah,
They might be getting paid in Bitcoin because the president of El Salvador, he's a big Bitcoin guy. He thinks Bitcoin's always going to go
yeah,
up. So that's a joke. Maybe though, there could be other concessions. I mean, you got to realize Mexico and Canada just had to do all sorts of negotiations to avoid sanctions. Maybe this is a bid by the president of El Salvador to avoid the sanctions. that could have been placed on his country and their exports. Maybe it's to get more investment. USAID got shut down, so we're gonna have to use alternative channels for different types of foreign investment. The Trump administration is going to have to create entirely new vehicles to give money to foreign nations that we have good relationships with. So whatever gets created, I bet you El Salvador will be one of the countries at the top of the list because of this collaboration with the Trump administration if it's created within the next few years of Trump's term. So I mean, a lot of stuff isn't just about straight dollars and cents. Some of it is just about building relationships and these sort of hard line law and order candidates, Donald Trump with immigration, Bukele with criminals and the gang element in El Salvador. They're trying to sort of build an alliance, it looks like, in the Western Hemisphere and beyond, in Europe as well, and sort of all trying to stick their hands out and have each other's backs and pick each other up when they're down. Just like what's going on with Russia and Vladimir Putin. Trump and Vladimir Putin seem to have a very tight relationship. So, you know, there's
Yeah.
a brotherhood of authoritarians, is what it seems like to me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, you're 1000% right with that. I like the last point you just said just now, Chad. We're talking about like brotherhood authoritarians because we're seeing a lot of things going on right now, and the United States is becoming a very, very like scary place. If you kind of see like, for me, seeing it from the outside point of view, you're seeing a lot. I'm checking a lot of boxes that show, okay, this country is becoming more and more authoritarian, and I'm like, Americans, they don't fully expect that to ever happen to them, but I'm like, well, when you get a guy like this individual we have as president, Donald J. Trump, who who gets offended easily, that's one thing for sure.
He's an
Uh,
emotional individual, for sure.
Very emotional individual. Especially like after everything he's been through. I've been telling people for some time, what's one of the worst things they did to him? I was like, when they went after him for 4 years for like to like take him to jail,
Yeah, yeah.
that
The
was the worst thing you could have did to him, in my opinion. So I'm like, if when you did that, now you made him more desperate, and he had to go for elections,
yeah.
and because he had to go for elections, because if you can't arrest the president of the United States, and that kind of led to him like getting reelected. I'll be honest with you. That was one of the worst things they did. One of the worst things. I'll be honest, he doesn't care about this country. I don't believe he does. But he just that is one of his biggest reasons for being reelected is the fact that he wanted to kind of like be
Avoid
immune,
jail. Yeah, I mean, it's a great reason.
avoid jail.
A lot of people do a lot of stuff to
So
avoid jail. So
exactly, and I'm like, and now he's going to use this opportunity to come after anybody that came after him, which he has already started. Uh, Signs of authoritarian right there. Even some of his policies right now, specifically like the burning of the Teslas and stuff like that.
yeah,
It's like he's calling them terrorists and stuff like that. That he's like he says he's gonna go jail them and stuff. So I was like, oh, interesting. So
and they've also said they might try to deport U.S. citizens to El Salvador if they've protested again, if they've in support of terrorist organizations. So, namely, support of Hamas or Hezbollah or any other of the opponents of Israel in the Middle Eastern region. So, a lot of stuff
yeah, I
going on
heard
with it.
about that.
Also,
But that's right there. You're playing a very very dangerous game by doing that too. Because if you do that, that right there it's an easy lawsuit, even if you try. Because if you try to deport an American citizen, there, I'm sorry, that's unconstitutional right there. That's not that's a foreign nation right there.
we'll see how much the
It's a foreign
Constitution
nation.
matters pretty soon. I mean, based on our next story, there may be some people who can't even read the Constitution coming around, coming out of American schools pretty soon. Trump has been
Yeah.
doing a big defunding of the Department of Education. So he offloaded a lot of their duties. Number one that I noticed, which I thought was the most interesting, was he offloaded the practice of student loan payment servicing to other
Mhm.
departments. Several other, I think it was the Small Business Association. So several of the overall practices that they were in charge of and the things that they had to oversee as a department, they've been getting moved around to other departments, and there have been extreme cuts to their personnel. So it looks like Trump is trying to actually shut down the entire Department of Education. That's what some people who are really educated in the issue say is happening. As of right now, we still do have a Department of Education in the United States, but Hey, by the time at the time of recording, we have one that may date this. By the time it comes out, you may know which day we recorded it because tomorrow it could get shut down. But it is interesting to see that. I mean, it's been sort of a target of a lot of conservative administrations for a few years. I mean, at first they were saying it along ideological grounds. Mostly there was the famous, the drag queens who were reading books to children. There was the woke ideology, the anti Christopher Columbus stuff, the anti Confederate stuff. A lot of that was going on, and they were saying, "Well, you're trying to indoctrinate them with the Department of Education," and now it's looking
Mm.
like they're trying to stop the indoctrination machine instead of reversing it. I kind of thought when Trump took over, he would have people in charge of the Department of Education who would really work to sort of just like what they're doing with removing DEI from all Department of Defense stuff. I thought it'd be very similar to that for education. They would just reverse indoctrination. They would say, "Well, let's push back and do what they did, but with our ideology." But instead, it looks like he's just trying to just completely strip that department from having any power over how people are educated and make that a more locally based practice where each state decides what their educational standards are going to be. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 1000%. I kind of see what they're trying to do. I'll be honest with you. They're gonna try, especially these southern states. They're gonna try like make it more privatized. So basically, in my eyes, it's gotta like see like this kids are gonna be like education is gonna be some sort of luxury instead of actually like a right for these kids,
Right.
which is gonna be very sad to see, very sad and wrong. Being honest with you, because it shouldn't be like that at all. It really shouldn't be like that.
No, I'm a big supporter of primary education being funded by the government. I am a huge. I have some
Yeah,
opinions where I'm pro government, some where I'm anti education. Yeah, we need to have schools run. Everybody has to pay taxes and have schools operational. That's how I
yeah,
feel.
exactly, exactly. Because at the end of the day, bro, like not everybody could afford
A private tutor, a private school.
a private tutor. And then another thing people don't even talk about the education system, especially the schooling system, bro. The free housing, free. I mean, meals like free breakfast, stuff like that. That's like sometimes people's only meals. You know what
It's
I'm saying?
it's a further abandonment of the youth by an aging electorate, and especially by an aging political class, a leadership group in
Yeah.
this country. They really have, in recent years, like I know whether it's conservative or whether it's liberal, we're seeing a lot of people in power just completely abandon children and abandon the youth and not take into account any of the data that shows, oh, this is what's good for children. This is what helps mold them, into people who are fully functional, who are healthier, who are able to learn more.
Mm.
We're seeing the youth be abandoned in mass, and a lot of it is because these people who are in charge, who made their money and who are now running the government through every administration, they're old. These people are 50, 60, 70 years old. Their kids are there. Donald Trump has kids who are almost 50. You know what I mean? What does he care? I mean, he actually does have a young kid, but he's rich enough to afford private school, private tutors, private everything. I bet you his kid has never stepped foot inside a public school. So all in all, we're dealing with a class of people who do not have the best interest of the future generations of this nation in mind. And that's why I've always said, even if we're going to have, this brotherhood of authoritarians, can we get some young brothers in the brotherhood? Can we get some guys Bukele's age or younger, all right? Can we set a cap? Like, if you're going to be a dictator, you got to be 45 or younger. Have all your hair, no grays. Like, something reasonable.
And Bukele is what in his early 40s or something like that.
I think he might even be in his late 30s. Let me double check that. Bukele is one of the younger leaders in the world. That's why, even though he's done a lot of stuff lately and he's, consorting with a lot of shady individuals, he's 43 years old. Interesting. Fun
Or
fact.
30.
Me and Bukele, same birthday. That's crazy.
It's awesome.
Yeah, good.
Let's see. He's a young guy. That guy's a young guy. You could tell like
He's younger than
even
me.
like how he speaks. He's very eloquent when he speaks. I'll give him that.
Yeah, that's why no matter what, I have to support him a little bit just because, he may be a dictator who's driving that country towards an authoritarianism they haven't seen, a level of authoritarianism they haven't seen since the 1980 Civil War. But you know what? At least he's young. That's it. We're not anti anything in this podcast except for one thing. We are anti old people ruining the world for young people. If anybody's gonna ruin the world for us, it should be other young people, and that's why we're a little bit pro Bukele and a little bit anti Trump right now, and definitely very anti Salman bin Mohammed Al Saud. But we're pro MBS. At least I am. Ferris has morals, but hey, we'll see how much money it takes for him to get rid of those. If anybody from any of these nations we mentioned wants us to completely redact this and change what we said, as always, reach out to me privately, send me an email, send me a DM, and there's a certain amount of money we will take to make a fluff piece for you. Anything else you
Will
want
it
to
be
say?
a state-sponsored
I would
propaganda?
love to be state sponsored media. Please, any country with a leader under 60 years old, send me a check.
Why would if Erdogan just comes and listen, you gotta start supporting old people more.
Man, that's a hard. Sorry, I have one moral: no oldies, no old money, only young money.
Gotcha. I see.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today, guys. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and please, as always, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. I've been getting told that I'm not saying it enough, and that I need to really emphasize it. That you need to get more engagement. Like, subscribe, and comment. Comment below. We're gonna have a poll. Comment below your favorite leader, your favorite global leader under the age of 60. And as always, have a wonderful day. Say bye, Bears.
Hey guys.